My parents ignored my wedding because I'm married ahead of my flawless sister now. Can you imagine pouring your heart into planning the most important day of your life, your wedding, only for your own parents to deliberately, maliciously skip it? I swear I thought I knew what pain was, what disappointment felt like. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for that day, or the shocking realization that their absence was just the first shot fired in a war they'd been waging for years. And the fallout? Well, that's where things get really wild. So here's the deal. I'm Rebecca, I'm 32, and 8 months ago, I married the most incredible man. It should have been a dream, right? Everyone was there, celebrating with us, except for two very important people, my parents and my sister, Molin. Now, with Molin, my 30-year-old sister, honestly, her absence wasn't a huge shock. We've always had a complicated relationship, to put it mildly. But my parents, their decision to stay away, to just not show up, that hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. But how do you really prepare for that kind of betrayal from your own family? To truly get it, you need to understand the twisted dynamics of my family. I can't even fully blame my parents for constantly, openly favoring Molin. Throughout her entire life, my sister has been, to them, this perfect, shining star. She was the one who effortlessly commanded attention the moment she walked into any room. From the time she could barely walk, she was winning every spelling bee, every science fair, every talent show in elementary school. High school was no different. Class president, valedictorian, prom queen. You name it, she aced it. She was tall, naturally slender, incredibly attractive, and even pursued modeling while she was in college, before eventually focusing on her business degree. I still remember the day she got her first professional modeling job, back when she was just a sophomore. My parents, they threw a lavish party, invited our entire extended family and all her friends, just to celebrate that. They even framed her first professional headshot and hung it proudly above our living room fireplace, where it still sits to this very day. That same year, I quietly earned my degree in computer science. Their response? A dismissive, well done, before they immediately dove back into planning Molin's next photo session. After graduation, she climbed the corporate ladder like it was a sport. She landed a job at a prominent company, and by the age of 30, she already had her own corner office and a corporate car, a senior executive in a major corporation. Meanwhile, I'm a mid-level software developer at a respectable tech company, and honestly, I genuinely like my work. It's a good, stable career, but it's not the kind of job that makes parents boast in front of the entire family. You know, the kind of job that gets framed headshots. And then there was my appearance. I'm bigger and shorter than my sister, and my mother never let me forget it. Growing up, her crude remarks about my weight were constant. She signed me up for workout classes I never wanted to attend, put me on endless diets, always with the same cutting lines. Molin never struggles with her weight, or you could look as nice as your sister if you just put in a little more effort. Even though I'd learned to block out those remarks, by high school, they left their mark. Over the years, I started to accept these stark differences. I finally, painfully, came to terms with the fact that my parents would never take as much delight in my accomplishments as they did in Molin's. What choice did I have? For years, I had desperately tried to earn their approval. I took classes they suggested, joined clubs they encouraged, even attempted modeling for a brief, disastrous period. A failure Molin never lets me forget, by the way. But nothing was ever enough. I was just the second daughter, always overshadowed, always less than. They were completely, utterly, and blindingly enamored with my sister's achievements. Sometime in my mid-20s, I just gave up trying to impress them. It was like a switch flipped. I started focusing on building my own life, growing professionally on my terms, and forming genuine connections with people who actually respected me for who I am. And honestly, things got so much better after that. I knew my parents were obsessed with maintaining appearances, so I kept my interactions with them superficial, just enough to avoid conflict. At the mandatory Christmas dinners and awkward family gatherings, I'd just nod and grin, letting them rave about Molin's latest job, her new boyfriend, or her exotic vacation spot. Since they had Molin to swoon over, they never seemed to notice my emotional distance or how little of myself I actually shared with them. Then, at a computer conference, fate stepped in. Through a mutual friend, I met my husband. And from the moment he walked into my life, everything changed. He noticed me. He actually saw me, truly saw me in a way my family never had. He loved my dry sense of humor, my ability to code, and yes, even my body type. From day one, he never once suggested I should change, never made comparisons to other people. He just loved me. After 4 incredible years of dating, he proposed. We were just at home, enjoying takeout and our favorite TV show in the background. It was simple, intimate, and absolutely perfect. Naturally, I called my folks to tell them I was engaged. Their response? Well, that should have been my first clue. There were no congratulations, just a chilling silence. Then my mother, in her infinite wisdom, questioned whether I was certain I wanted to jump right in, and casually suggested I might want to improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father, as usual, didn't say much at all. At our engagement party, my husband, who was observant even when I was too anxious to fully grasp what was happening, noticed their odd behavior. For most of the evening, they were huddled in a corner, whispering, my mother glued to her phone. He later told me he'd overheard them talking to Molin, who was clearly crying on the other end. He vaguely heard them saying things like, this wasn't the plan, and how they never expected Rebecca to get married first. Wedding planning was a nightmare, mostly thanks to them. Despite Molin not even being engaged at the time, my mother had already made countless wedding Pinterest boards for her. When it came to my wedding, she showed zero interest in helping me pick a dress or venue. When I finally chose my dress, a simple yet exquisite A-line gown that made me feel genuinely beautiful, my mother's only comment was that it was practical and suitable for your figure. It broke my heart, but thankfully my future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had, stepped up and helped me with almost all the preparations. She was an absolute angel. My husband and I meticulously reviewed and double-checked the guest list, making sure no one was overlooked. We sent out both electronic and paper wedding invitations. I am 100% certain my parents received theirs. The electronic invitations even had red receipts. When they didn't RSVP, I called, texted, and emailed them multiple times. My messages were either ignored completely or met with vague, evasive responses like, we're very busy, and we need to check our schedules. I was too swamped getting ready for the wedding to waste much more energy worrying about it, especially with my in-laws being so incredibly helpful, offering assistance with everything from seating charts to floral arrangements. Even at the beautiful bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the painfully obvious absence of my own family was never once brought up. The wedding day itself was beautiful. We had a laid-back afternoon celebration after a morning wedding in a gorgeous garden setting. Everyone said we looked so content, so deeply in love. And we were. But there were moments, sharp, agonizing moments, when their absence felt like a physical anguish. Seeing those front row seats empty, or realizing I wouldn't have a father-daughter dance, it was soul-crushing. After the honeymoon, I wanted answers. I finally managed to get them on the phone, and my mother immediately launched into a lengthy tirade. She claimed they were deeply hurt that they had never gotten a formal invitation. She went on about how careless I was, how she had always wanted to assist in organizing her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't comprehend why I would leave them out of such a significant occasion. I was completely perplexed because I knew without a shadow of a doubt that we had sent them both types of invitations. While she ranted, I calmly looked through our records and confirmed that we had indeed sent them. Even the physical invitations had confirmed delivery. But I didn't confront them about their blatant attempts to gaslight me. I just said I was sorry for the error and hung up. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Later, my husband brought up a number of incidents that, in hindsight, clearly demonstrated their true intentions. He reminded me how they'd looked surprised, not delighted, when we told them we were engaged. How they kept coming up with endless excuses not to assist with the wedding planning. He hadn't brought these things up earlier because he didn't want to add to my anxiety during the planning process. But in retrospect, the pattern was chillingly clear. The idea that I, the less successful daughter, was getting married before their beloved Molin was simply too much for them to bear. Their demeanor, their words, their actions, they all served to validate what I had always suspected, but had fiercely resisted believing, that I would never, ever be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most depressing thing was realizing that even my wedding day, which ought to have been a pure celebration of love and fresh starts, had been twisted into yet another front in their never-ending war to preserve their ideal family image, with Molin at its very core. Fast forward a bit. Molin recently got engaged. Apparently, she'd been dating someone for about a year. And through the family members I still talk to, because I've stopped engaging in the main family group chats, I found out that my parents are openly expressing their excitement about organizing an elaborate, over-the-top wedding for her. They're already boasting about securing upscale locations and luxury gowns, and my mother is taking Molin to private fittings at exclusive, high-end stores. All that mother-daughter wedding planning time I was never allowed? Molin is getting it in spades. But here's where things get really interesting. A large number of our extended family are suddenly, mysteriously, refusing to go to Molin's wedding and engagement party. It seems my parents' actions at my wedding became quite the topic of conversation within the family grapevine. When relatives ask me why my parents didn't attend my wedding, I simply tell them what I believe to be the truth. I just say they couldn't bear it when I married before their beloved daughter. I present the facts as I perceive them, without embellishment or trying to win sympathy. A few days ago, my parents finally got in touch with me. They accused me of purposefully attempting to spoil Molin's wedding. According to them, the relatives they've spoken to are using flimsy reasons to avoid going to any of her wedding-related festivities. My cousin, to whom my sister had apparently vented, informed her that people are reluctant to come because they've heard about my parents' treatment of me. My parents, naturally, claim that because I'm envious of my sister's impending lavish wedding, I'm spreading false stories. The problem is, I'm only telling folks the truth about what happened. Maybe they should consider their own conduct instead of blaming me for the results. If the truth makes them appear terrible, well, perhaps they should have thought about that before they chose to behave that way. As things continue to change and unravel, I'm finding it harder and harder to keep up the appearance of a relationship with my parents. Their behavior during my wedding, the gaslighting, the blatant favoritism, it finally made it undeniably clear to me that I would never be sufficient for them. No matter what I did, no matter what I achieved. Their absence at my wedding is no longer the most difficult aspect of this whole saga. It's coming to terms with the crushing realization that I never truly had the kind, encouraging parents I always yearned for. For now, I'm concentrating on creating a life with someone who genuinely appreciates me for who I am. But I'll keep you updated if anything important changes. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and let me tell you, a lot has transpired. After reading all your encouraging comments, I finally felt it was time to put everything on the table. I decided to speak with my parents face to face about their actions at my wedding and their current accusations that I'm trying to ruin my sister's special day. During our phone call, before I could even get a word in, my parents immediately launched into their usual accusations. They claimed I was jealous of Molin and had planned this whole thing to sabotage her. I did something I had never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they anticipated. Instead of defending myself, as I always would have, I said to them, "You're correct. I am envious." There was a brief, stunned silence on the line. I continued, "But I'm not envious of Molin's career, not her accomplishments, not her appearance." My voice cracked a little, but I pushed through. "I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've shown her, the kind of love and support you never even made an effort to show me. A beat of shocked silence. Then my mother started in, claiming I was exaggerating, that they had always treated us equally. Something broke inside of me at that moment. Feelings that had been repressed for years, decades even, came flooding out. I told them about each birthday when Molin's latest success eclipsed my own accomplishments. I reminded them how my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner because Molin had a modeling callback. I talked about how Molin's prom outfit cost more than the total cost of my college textbooks for an entire year. My father tried to cut me off, accusing me of exaggerating, but I just kept going. I talked about how it felt to watch them spend years meticulously organizing my sister's fictitious wedding, only to show absolutely no interest in my own. I told them how utterly painful it was to see their seats vacant on my wedding day, and how my mother-in-law, a virtual stranger, had to step in and help me with everything from wedding planning to dress buying. Their reaction was incredibly instructive. Instead of accepting any of my arguments, they completely flipped it back on me. "Why did you never speak up if you felt this way?" my mother insisted, as if I hadn't tried to speak with them for years, as if I hadn't been ignored time and time again. My father went on to say that by discussing these emotions with our family members, I was being unjust and spiteful. And then my mother said something at that point that finally clarified everything. It was like a key turning in a lock. "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths as to try to ruin Molin's wedding out of spite," she declared, her voice cold. "But we always knew you were insecure about her success. This is not how we brought you up." That's when I realized they couldn't even hear me. They genuinely believed that their behavior and my emotions had nothing to do with this entire situation. For them, it only mattered how this affected Molin's reaction, Molin's wedding. Even during this discussion about their glaring absence from my own wedding, they were more worried about her impending nuptials than the profound hurt they had caused me. For the first time in my life, I didn't attempt to make things better. I didn't retract or apologize. Instead, I expressed my thoughts to them directly, calmly. "You're correct on one point," I said. "I was raised by you, and you instilled in me the belief that I would never measure up, that Molin's accomplishments would always be more significant than mine, that upholding your ideal family image was more essential than my own feelings." I paused, letting that sink in. "However," I continued, "you also taught me something else, something you didn't mean to teach me. You taught me that I deserve better than this." There was a long, heavy pause before my father spoke. His tone was cool, collected, utterly devoid of warmth. "Maybe it's time for us to stop acting like we're bad parents," he said, "since you've already determined that we are, and you obviously take pleasure in seeing us suffer. Since you are family, we assumed you would assist in resolving this issue. But it is clear that you have made your own decisions." My mother delivered the final blow. "Perhaps you simply couldn't cope with not being the center of attention, even though we always tried to treat you both fairly, Rebecca. That's not our fault. You made the decision to play the victim." I didn't argue. Why would it matter? Everything I had been saying had just been validated by them. They were completely unable to admit their involvement in any of it, even at this final, desperate discussion. I just hung up, said goodbye and hung up. I was surprised to feel a profound sense of relief after the call. Tears were shed, to be sure, but they weren't the frantic, heartbreaking ones I remembered from my early years. These were liberating tears. For the first time, I had expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I felt. Later, my husband found me gazing at the sunset from our back porch. He sat next to me and, without a word, simply grasped my hand. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him after a time. "No," he said, squeezing my hand, "but you have, and that is what counts." He is correct. I've changed. The young child who frantically tried to win her parents' approval is no longer there. The woman who came out of that last conversation no longer needs their validation. although acknowledging that my parents will never be the people I need them to be is painful. It is not as painful as holding out hope that they would change. For the first time, I don't really care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama. I've had my say, and they now have to deal with whatever comes up. The most peculiar aspect? I feel as though a burden I've carried my entire life has finally been lifted. Although it's not the happy ending I had hoped for with my parents, perhaps it was the one I needed. The ability to quit striving for love that ought to have come naturally. It's been about 3 days since my run-in with our parents, and let me tell you, things have taken another surprising turn. Molin decided it was her turn to get involved in the drama. But her strategy? It failed horribly. My sister sent me a very, very carefully composed message yesterday morning. Her condescending tone, which she's perfected over the years, was evident in every single word. She started off with, "What you said to your parents was totally inappropriate. They have helped us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You cannot simply blame them for being poor parents because you are insecure about the decisions you have made in life." Oh, it gets better. She continued the message with her typical blend of moral superiority and covert jabs. "I understand that your wedding wasn't exactly what you had envisioned, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have put in a lot of effort to meet specific standards. Rebecca, not everything needs to be a contest." I didn't even bother to answer. I've discovered that interacting with her merely provides her with more ammunition. After years of putting up with her manipulative conduct, I just blocked her number. Molin has never been one to put up with being ignored, so I assumed that wouldn't be the end of it. I was right. A few hours later, my husband called me at work, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Molin, apparently unable to get in touch with me directly, had somehow found his personal number, probably through some mutual acquaintance, and sent him a string of texts outlining the precise reasons why our sister relationship has never been good. She began her initial communication to him in a sufficiently professional manner. As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out. But it quickly devolved into her actual, transparent motivations. She informed my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave in a more suitable manner because he was the new man in Rebecca's life. The messages became increasingly patronizing. "Family dynamics are complex," she told my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, adding that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture. She advised him to help me see reason before I irreparably harm family relationships. But her attempt to play on what she believed to be his social climbing impulses, that was the true kicker. In fact, she wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects, and by extension yours." My husband, who has always been able to see straight through Molin's facade, thought her entire attempt at manipulation was hilarious. He particularly loved her presumption that her business rank or the prospect of networking opportunities would somehow impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We went over the messages together when I got home that night. Instead of feeling offended or upset, I was just laughing with my husband, seeing Molin's deceptive methods exposed so clearly, particularly when they were aimed at someone who was totally impervious to them, was incredibly liberating. I learned something significant about my sister as a result of this encounter. She is still that insecure adolescent who needs to tear others down in order to feel superior, despite all of her achievements and success. It's clear how little she knows about good relationships that she believed she could control me by manipulating my husband. When her direct approach failed, she swiftly turned to trying to use my husband against me, which was the most revealing aspect. She used to do precisely that in high school. She'd attempt to turn my friends against me when she was unable to bully me directly. Different decade, same desperate strategies. With this fresh viewpoint, I now understand how Molin's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry. Throughout our early years, she made a concerted effort to keep her status as the favored child, always telling our parents and me how much better she was. She had to overshadow whatever I accomplished. She had to point out my shortcomings to everyone I made friends with. My response to her games is completely different now. Her messages would have caused me to fall into self-doubt 10 years ago. I would have been upset and hurt 5 years ago. Today, simply put, I'm sick of the drama and find her blatant attempts at manipulation amusing. My husband's response was ideal. Rather than becoming embroiled in her drama, he merely responded, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day." Molin, not receiving the desired reaction, sent one last message. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, Molin's desperate attempt to assist has only further strengthened my resolve to keep my distance from the destructive dynamics of my family. Nothing has changed, as evidenced by her messages to my spouse. She is still the same cunning individual who feels the need to dictate every story and who perceives any departure from her ideal family script as a threat. Knowing that her attempts at persuasion were so totally unsuccessful is perhaps the most pleasant aspect of the entire incident. She succeeded in bringing my spouse and I closer together rather than causing us to drift apart. Totally unconcerned by her fears of social repercussions, we joked about her texts and planned a weekend trip during the evening. I've come to understand that true family isn't about upholding facades or dictating stories. It's about standing together, laughing together, and supporting one another when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'd be better off keeping a safe distance from Molin's wedding drama, instead of getting sucked into my